welcome back to my channel. Today is the best of 2020 books. So on my Instagram page, I went through month by month and told you my favorite books for the month. Here's going to be slightly different. I'm just going to look at all the books that I read in the month, in the year of 2020, and tell you which ones are my favorites. I read so many books in 2020, and today I'm going to tell you about some of the favorite books that I read this year. You're going to see some repeat authors on this list. You're going to see some books that are just so fantastic. At the end, I will tell you which book is my absolute favorite. So I hope that 2020 has brought you some good books, and hopefully 2021 will bring lots more good books. So let's start off. My first book that was one of my favorites on this list is The Heart of a Vicar. This was a reread for me. This is the most recent Jonquil series book by Sarah Eden, and it is really great in the sense that you follow along all these characters, different couples for each book. You get to see where all of them are and how all of them are doing. There's some really, really beautiful moments of transformation and connecting with family in this story. And it was just so good. And I loved it. And I hadn't read this for probably about, I want to say 8 months since I had read it initially, maybe more. So I forgot just some of the heartfelt moments in this, and it was just a perfect, right around the start of the pandemic read for me. I think I reread this whole series at the beginning of the pandemic because you just need a book that makes you happy, and this was it for me. I loved it. Next up on this list is Lies, Love, and Breakfast at Tiffany's. If you've seen my disabilities video, my first one ever that I created, you'll know that this book meant a lot to me in a very personal way because it's the most relatable character with disability that I've ever found in fiction for me personally. The story is really great, the content's really great, the development of these characters individually as well as, you know, as a team in this romance story was really well developed. I just can't say enough good things about this book. If you like romance, whether it be clean romance or Hollywood romances or film, something a little bit different and modern and fun and creative, then this may be a book for you because it was so good. Next up we have Love Remains, the third in the O'Connor family series, also by Sarah Eden. This story is about not one but two people with blindness and the development and the contrast between both those characters, one who's been blind for a while and has adapted to it and been able to teach others about how to live their most independent and self-sufficient lives. And she's trying to help a younger student who has been blind only for a short amount of time get acclimated to transitions and changes so that he can be independent, he can be self-sufficient to the best of his ability, and to see how he doesn't have to give up on himself. And it's heartfelt, so good. Definitely worth reading. Next book on this list is the Bromance book club. This one had more steam than I wanted, but the comedy was great. The Bromance book club was great, where it's this group of guys who are all reading romance books in order to learn about how they can better themselves in their relationships with their partners, communicate better, take care of their partner better, that kind of thing. I really liked that focus on relationship building and making stronger relationships, taking away toxic masculinity. There were a whole bunch of things that are just really great and really, really enjoyable and funny to read. Next up, we have the Radium Girls. This was so great. This author, who I think is a playwright, actually directed a stage version of this story and then decided to write this nonfiction story in order to tell the story of these girls who have been exposed to radium and who were suffering so greatly and not being heard by the judicial system for a long time. You would think this would be such a downer, and don't get me wrong, it was moments of sadness, but I don't know if it was the audiobook or just the way the story was told, but I felt like I was along the ride for each of these girls on their journeys, at work with them, like next to them, seeing what they were seeing, and getting to be a part of their journey to fight for justice. Getting to be a part of their journey to fight for justice. And a really uplifting ending to the best of its ability to be definitely bittersweet. Great story, so enjoyable. So Radium Girls was fantastic. Not as difficult a read for the pandemic as I would think, but I also balanced it out with reading lighter books prior to this book and after this book. So all balance. Next up on this list, let's see. My favorite YA thriller. This is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This title had initially just kind of been off-putting to me. So glad I gave this story a shot. The initial death that causes the investigation throughout the story was a little bit hard for me to read, but once it doesn't focus on that for very long, and then you can get past that, and the twists and turns and were really great, and it just felt like you were constantly on a roller coaster. You didn't know where this was going. Once you thought you had it figured out, it changed again and again. Thought it was well done, really great. My best mystery thriller of the year. Definitely in the YA category, possibly in the adult category too. It was really, really well done. Next up, we have A Portrait of Loyalty. This is the third book in the Koberger series by Rosanna White. So good! And I also read the second book in the trilogy, which came out back in February, and then the third one came out in September. So she's like a writing fiend because she is publishing all these great books. So enjoyed it. Okay, so I am back. Had to run and pick up the snowblower, which we got for Christmas. So now I can finish up this video. Yay! Next up we have a series. So Saving Miss Everly is my favorite. It's a third of this series, but I truly just enjoyed this entire series. This is the Englewood series by Sally Britton. My introduction to this author. I really enjoyed the characters. We have a group of 5 friends in this story, so most of the books are about one of those friends. It's a Regency romance series that is just really enjoyable, fun to be a part of, and it's very creative in the way these stories take place. The first one is very creative. It's based on a forced marriage, but it's in a very kind of unusual and original way on the thought of the author. The series continues with each of this group of friends as each one gets married and finds a partner for life. We have book 3, which is one of the most interesting and original premises for a Regency romance, where we have someone who gets shipwrecked and she starts to discover that there's someone else who's been trapped on the island for a while, and they figure out, you know, the best way to move forward, keep the people who were shipwrecked, you know, safe until they can hopefully find a way to escape and get home. Then we have book 4, which is about Sir Isaac, and Isaac came back from the Napoleonic Wars missing an arm, so we get to see how he's adapted to that lifestyle. And then book 5, he is definitely not a nice guy. He definitely is uppity and kind of snooty because his dad's got a lot of moolah, but once that money is taken away from him, then he ends up working for a poor woman and her grandmother and her daughter, helping her maintain the lands around the cottage that she lives in. So good, so well thought out, and I just really enjoyed being in that world. I really liked the way the author wrote, I really liked the characters, and I just knew that for each of the 5 installments in this series, I had to keep reading, had to keep seeing what happened next. It was so good. Definitely glad I checked that out this year. Next up, we have Jorgana's Secret. This was awesome. I read this back in September. I was in my September wrap-up, and it just was so creatively done. There were so many twists and turns. Once you thought you had the story figured out, then something else happened, then something else. And it wasn't chaotic to read, but it was a unique original plot. We've got a girl who's hiding on her father's ship, pretending to be a boy in order to keep her safe. Then we have a young lieutenant on the ship and working and rising up in the ranks in his naval career. The two form an unlikely friendship, and seeing how that relationship progresses while he thinks that she's a boy and she is trying to maintain her secret identity. So keeping her safe on the ship, as well as, you know, away from people she has to be away from at home in England. Really interesting story, creative characters, great development. I'm so glad I read this story. I cannot recommend it enough. Jorgana's Secret comes out January 12th, 2021, so I definitely recommend getting yourself a copy of this book and checking it out. Next up, we have Miniatures and Morals. So if you are a Jane Austen fan, if you like taking apart classic books and understanding, you know, in greater detail, different underlying themes, this is a book for you, because honestly, I did not read this when I first got this book, but I am so glad I finally picked it up because it was so well done. I ended up rereading it a second time right after I finished the first. Highlight my favorite sections, kind of make notes, because it was just really interesting. It broadened my horizon. It gave me a different perspective of viewing each of the 6 Jane Austen novels, and it really got me thinking about things in different ways, stretch my understanding / perception of her stories. So that was really cool, and I really enjoyed reading it. I did not expect this to be a 5-star read for this year, but I really loved it and definitely recommend it. Speaking of nonfiction books, another one on this list is Your Blue Flame. This is part of my Thanksgiving week reading vlog, and it was so good. If you're thinking about books that just inspire you to be your best self, books that motivate you and make you want to follow your dreams, whether that be doing that full time or every now and then, and just to fill you up with some light and positivity and hope to the future, and just fuels you and inspires you and motivates you to create, to do something that adds to the world in some beautiful way. So really great book. definitely recommend it. Her other books are also fantastic, and just it really makes you think, and it's really easy to read and very fun and very relatable. She's very real, so that's really nice to relate to the author that you're reading from, especially for a nonfiction book. So definitely relatable and realistic and fun to read. Alright, 2 more on this list. Sticking with the nonfiction theme, we have Change Your Schedule, Change Your Life. This book I read in the very beginning of 2020 and it stuck with me. It's about understanding how your body works, how much food or protein your body needs at what points of the day, how much sleep your body needs, and what times of day to be asleep in order to maximize your energy, your health, your productivity. It's really interesting. It wasn't a long audiobook, but it really got me thinking and it stuck with me as I moved on to other books. So I really enjoyed that and really thought they were great things that I learned from this book and could take away from it. Does that mean I apply all these rules from this book wonderfully every day? No. But when I realize that I'm not feeling my best, or I'm not being as productive as I would like to, or not feeling as energetic as I would like to, I think about this book. And I think about the advice from this book, and then I think about what I can change for myself to better myself and help me be the best version of myself. So it's really nice that this book is something that I've read and something I will think back on as I move forward. Last but not least on this list, Miracle Creek Christmas. This was such a good book. We get to see what it's like for someone who is a burn victim moving forward from past trauma. Both of them really have past trauma. We get to see how those two find their way to meet one another and kind of bring each other out of living in the past and finding a way to move forward, not forgetting about that trauma, but also kind of coming to peace with the difficult times that are behind them, as well as finding a way to move forward and find some sunshine and bring in some light to the darkness that they've been kind of walking through. So it's really nice to see that. It's a great romance story. It sounds really heart-wrenching, but it didn't like super bum me out while I was reading it. I felt like I could totally read this during quarantine. So those are my books. If I had to pick my top favorites of the year, my top 2 favorites for the year were Dragana's Secret by Arlen Hawks and Love Remains by Sarah Eden. And if I had to pick a top book out of all those, it would be Love Remains. I just love the disability representation. I like the storytelling. There's so much heart to these characters, and it just gets me in the feels. It's so good. I highly recommend any of these books. They're all fantastic, and I'm sure that you've read some great books as well. So let me know in the comments what your favorite books are for the month of 2020. For the year of 2020, let me know what your favorite books were in the month of. Oh my gosh! Let me know what your favorite books were for the year of 2020, and I look forward to chatting more about books with you in the new year. So thanks so much for watching, and let me know if you've read any of these books. Alright, I'll chat with you guys later. Have a great day!